Hi everyone. First of all, thank you for sacrificing lunch and being here with me today. And secondly, welcome to my talk, LGTM, Prepping a Mature Open Source Project for GraalVM. First of all, I'm going to lose some of my credibility, at least developer credibility, because I thought LGTM stood for looks good to me all this time. But apparently it's let's get this merged. I think both serve fine. So thank you for being here. Let's move forward. So my name is Michaël Demey. That's my picture up there, as you can tell. I'm the research manager at Apprise. That means that I lead a small team of developers that work on prototyping, researching the market for new trends within our space. That's a document processing space. And we also do DevRel efforts, which is why I'm here today. Next to that, I'm also a PDF expert because of my history within the company. When I started at the company, I didn't know that there was a PDF expert. If you told me that a thing existed like a PDF expert, I would have assumed that you meant a PDF export and would have corrected you back then. So that is me. A small bit about the company, about Apprise. Apprise is a relatively new company. It's formerly known as PDFtron, iText, etc. It's a conglomeration of multiple companies brought together as Apprise, made better. So there's a few tools that you may know, like iText or Lee tools, and we all work around document processing. Like we do document generation from templates, from source code. We do manipulation, like conversion HTML to PDF, for instance, editing, etc. Another major use case that we serve, and which is very hot for us right now, is digital signatures. So if you want to talk about that, feel free to contact us after the talk. We have a booth downstairs. It's where you get to DevOps polos. That's about where we are. We'll be here all day, all week, so feel free to talk to us and to grab us to discuss technical content. Let's take a look at the agenda for today. There's a small agenda for today, because let's start with the first one. What is cross-platform? I'm just going to briefly touch on that, what it does, what it is, what it meant for us at iText and at Apprise, how we solved cross-platform, supporting multiple platforms. Then we introduced Graal into that story. How did we get to Graal? What did we do to support it? And what's the road ahead? What's the future? What are we planning next? Or what's coming towards us for Graal? So let's get the intros going. So what is cross-platform? I turned to Wikipedia for basic definitions. Cross-platform is software that is computer software that is designed to work in several computing platforms. Think of Mac versus Linux, or iOS, Android, embedded system, etc. Anything that can run across multiple platforms should be considered cross-platform. So isn't Java cross-platform? Yes, it is, and this is where I would end my talk if I was to be funny. But yeah, Java is cross-platform. I haven't encountered during my career any platform that doesn't have a JVM. Maybe there is an exotic form of it, but I haven't come across it so far. So yeah, but there's more to being cross-platform than just being able to execute code. There's way more than just running the code and seeing the results, seeing the data that comes out of it. There's also performance to consider, for, execution time versus the resource management that it has, like how big a memory footprint do you use, how big are your executables, your runtimes that you need. There's also interoperability that you need to take into account. How does your application interact with other applications on the same machine that you're running your application on? As for Apprise, the company, our products are cross-platform. We have multiple products that are cross-platform, like Apprise SDK is cross-platform on C++, C#, Java, Android, JavaScript, etc. We also have iText, which is where I came from 13 years ago, is iText. So it's available in Java, .NET, and Android. We have multiple strategies to bring these to multiple platforms. We'll briefly touch on them just to show what we've done up until now to support multiple platforms, and then introduce Graal. So let's start with the one that I'm most familiar with, because okay, how does iText support multiple platforms? iText is supported in two major code bases on a source code level. As you can see, I hope it's legible. So on the left-hand side, we have the Java file for one of our classes, and on the right-hand side, you have the C# source code for the same class. As you can see, they're similar. I could have shown more complex code, but I mean, it's just an example. The codes are similar, they are the same. We don't do binary conversion. We don't do cross-compilation or anything. We do a source code level translation. So iText on Java. iText was created in Java. Back when I joined, iText was built on Java 5. Not because it was the most modern one at the time, but because our customers used it mostly. But we've increased back then. Almost all development today still happens on Java first. There's a minimal amount of development that we do in C++, C#, I mean, and everything translates nicely. iText on .NET, I already mentioned it earlier. It's not just a binary. We don't just cross-compile into C# code. But it's also not a watered-down version either. I've seen some products during my market analyses in which you would get a list of features in Java, for instance, but then you wouldn't be able to sign files in C#, for instance, which is a bit annoying for your users, a bit annoying. So we don't do that, and we offer what I call a functionally equivalent source, a project. So everything one platform can do, Java, for instance, in this case, the other should also be able to do. So anything that you can do in our Java build is, given some cosmetic changes in the syntax, completely transferable to the .NET builds. I did put like an asterisk there because, I mean, we have to be a bit more correct. Terms and conditions may apply. The Java platform and the C#, the .NET runtime, they aren't completely congruent. There are stuff missing from one to the other. One thing that comes to mind is the way that signatures, encryption, security are handled on Java. That's completely different than how it's handled in .NET. So we are functionally equivalent, but sometimes you need to do things a bit differently according to your platform that you're programming on and using iText on. So we have a solution to do that. It's not our solution, but it's an open source command line tool, the library, that you can use. It's online on GitHub. The URL is at the lower left. It translates Java code to C# code. It works perfectly fine out of the box for simple use cases. But for iText, we needed a bit more. So we made a lot of extensions on top of Sharpen. So there's a few restrictions when using Sharpen. As you may imagine, automated porting of Java code doesn't come free. We have a few restrictions, meaning that not everything can be ported automatically. So we have this thing called manual files, which is something that every iText developer hates to hear. It's basically a list of files that if you touch them in your commit, then you will have to make the conversion manually. Our build system, Jenkins, it will stop. It will let you know, like, hey, I encountered manual files. Please update the C# code as you should, and then continue the process. These are files that touch on, as I mentioned, like encryption or signatures or anything that really dives into the standard libraries of either Java or C#. Another thing that is something to think about and something to always keep in mind when developing on iText is that some constructs should be avoided in Java. They're too hard to port correctly, or they're too Java idiomatic, too Java-ish to get correctly to C#. One thing that comes to mind that we have to avoid is using lambdas. I think we're on Java 8 at least since a few years, and those are too hard to port correctly automatically for us. So we try to avoid these to be as fully auto-portable as possible. And then the third thing is not so much a restriction, but is a thing to think about. The C# code that comes out of it isn't really fully C# code. It feels a bit like sometimes Java code in C#. Not as much as other solutions would do, but it's not really idiomatic, as you would call it. So to summarize, Autoport is our Sharpen. It's heavily customized version of Sharpen, and we extended it with specific features. And it's part of our automated build itself. So we use Jenkins. There's a whole pipeline that our QA engineers build so that we can easily run it, and then curse on them when everything is failing. Oops, sorry. So we disallow changes on develop directly. Nobody can push to develop or our main. We merge everything to the pipeline, which is automatically, of course. And a few steps. We do the SonarQube quality gates, which is static code analysis to check if your code is up to par, is up to a certain standard. We run our automated tests. Autoport needs to be successful, which means that, first of all, we need to build autoport, see if it compiles correctly. Then we need to port it. We need to run the C# code, compile it, and then run all the tests on C# as well. Everything needs to be green, and then everything gets merged. So it's a whole process that is automated. It does take some time, but we don't need to do anything manually anymore. At least the manual work is minimized, which is a huge improvement as to how it used to be. As mentioned, I joined iText, now a Prize, back in 2011, and when we did Java first. We released Java. We had a jar file, and then we froze the C# developed, but back then we were on SVN, so the trunk. And then we started porting every commit one by one, and that took us like a month or 2 weeks at minimum. So this is a huge improvement. Thank God for automation. The previous talk touched on automation, and you should automate as much as you can. They are correct. So what are the advantages of that strategy of having multiple platforms? So we treat .NET as a first-class citizen by offering .NET source code, which allows our users to also make pull requests. So iText is an open source project. You can check it out on GitHub, and you can make pull requests on C#. One note to make is that we will softly and gently guide you to make your pull request on Java, offer some assistance there, so that you can be caught up in the whole autoport process. And as a bonus, if you compile C# source code, you also catch C# bugs, of course, which then feed back into the Java build. Our second project is a Prize SDK, which offers support for many platforms, ranging from C++ to R to Python, JavaScript, etc. So a Prize SDK uses a more orthodox manner of doing it, and they wrap their C++ build into many different platforms. This is something that we've encountered with many competitors as well. The advantages there is that you have faster development times, faster builds, develop once, wrap everywhere, basically. Yeah, the one added advantage to this is that your documentation can also be automatically generated and wrapped into different platforms. So a summary for our cross-platformness for a Prize, before we go on to GraalVM, is that we have two strategies. We have the source code level translation, which feels sometimes like dark magic, and then you have the binary wrappers that we also offer. Now let's talk a bit about GraalVM. GraalVM is a technology that has been released in the past few years. And for those of you who don't know what it does, let's do a very brief introduction to it. GraalVM has a compiler, and it compiles Java source code into native executables, as opposed to how the JVM and the Java is virtualized on your own machine. So it says here, build faster, smaller, leaner applications. There's many upsides to using GraalVM. We're not going to go into the technical details as to how Graal works, but I'll explain it to me like I'm 5. So you run the GraalVM compiler on your project, and you get a binary. That's basically how I started this whole journey into GraalVM support. Dependencies, if possible, are included. So the Graal compiler will go into your dependencies and try to compile them, or try to find them somewhere else on the central server, which we'll touch on later. The advantage to using Graal is that you have the ecosystem available at the native level. It doesn't have the footprint of the JVM. There's no startup time, etc. There are also some downsides, because it does have to include your dependencies into the executable. It does have to include the paths of the standard library that it uses. So, but it's faster. It's an impressive piece of technology. Please check it out if you would like. So, what did we do? What is the essence of this whole presentation? So a few months, a year ago, actually, in August or in July, I was contacted by somebody from the Spring framework. Spring is a huge open source framework as well, which I love to use in the past. And we got an email asking, "Hey, do you know about GraalVM?" I said yes, and then I got back an issue like. Josh, the guy working for Spring, mentioned like iText is not compatible with GraalVM. We have a user that wants to use iText on Graal, but he's unable to use it, or they are unable to use it because it doesn't. It compiles, but it doesn't work at runtime. So we discussed back and forth, and what was the issue? So there was some difficulties with features that we were using. iText, for instance, uses reflection, which is hard for the compiler to pick up. Similar to how that one Android project worked a few years back. They also made they obfuscate your source code, and they try to reduce the objects that you use for the APK to be smaller. The name escapes me right now. But they have difficulties with finding reflection paths because it tries to find everything that you use, and then it compiles that and includes that into the binary, into the APK, in this case, the executable, the binary executable, native binary executable. And things that are loaded through reflection are not picked up because it's not used. You only load them at runtime, and then only then is your class or your object used, which is something that we've already encountered, obviously, in the past. So the solution is, which Josh told us, add compiler hints. There are ways to add compiler hints. He works on Spring, and Spring has a whole framework that allows you to generate these compiler hints, these files that you need for GraalVM compilation. As fate and luck would have it, I would fly out to California a few weeks later, which is where Josh is based, and we met up actually on a very sunny Sunday afternoon. I went to his apartment, saw this amazing view from his balcony, or I think it was a top floor, and we coded on iText, got a prototype working on iText 5, and we were happy. The output, excuse me, is a series of JSON files. Maybe I can show you in the GitHub repo. Not sure if that's legible. It probably isn't. That should be better, right? So Graal has a where is my cursor? Yeah, has a whole public repo that you can just contribute to if you want to get your project onto Graal, and anything that you need to tell the compiler you can add to this repo. So in our case, we use reflection, so you would like to add a reflection configuration file to this. And I think it's on the, sorry. Yeah, I don't see my cursor. Yep. So here we have iText. There's com.itext PDF, and then we have the forms.io package. And if you open that, you can see the reflect config JSON, and this is what it looks like. Basically, we're telling the compiler here, hey, we're using reflection in this class, and if you don't use it, then PDF name will not, in this case, it's PDF name. PDF name will not get included in the binary, and if you run the binary, then you will get runtime exceptions because iText will look for PDF name, but it won't find it. So this is telling Graal, please include this resource into your binary. Okay. So that was a very manual process. We wrote code, and we just let that run loose on our project, Josh and I, and then we got out all of the configuration files that we needed, and iText 5 was on GraalVM. Now, iText 5 is already an older project. We're on iText 8, bordering on 9. So we would like to modernize that Graal configuration as well. And instead of having to run that project every time, we took a different approach. if this wants to move, okay. So we let GraalVM compile, and then we run tests against the binary executable. We trace those tests, and we get out all the results where all the errors, exceptions are being thrown by the Graal runtime. And then all that tracing result is then being used by the GraalVM Maven plugin, which is also freely available. And that leaves us with all the configuration files automatically generated. So we have these files. How can we now enable our library for GraalVM support? There's three options. One is a very poor option, and I'll let you decide which one it is. But the first option is to include the configuration files into the jar files themselves. Very much like a manifest, you would include it into the jar file. The second option is to add the configuration files to a reachability repository, which is a centralized location. And the third option is to let users handle it. We opted for the second choice, unknowingly and without reason. We chose for a third option a long time before we chose for the second one. So we chose the second one. We made a pull request. We've got everything on the GraalVM page. There's a page there that lists all the projects that are supported on Graal that need additional attention. And then either you're 2 stars or 1 star supported. I don't know what the difference is between the two, but all I know is that the 1 star supported projects are the first versions that we uploaded, and the 2 stars are the newer ones. So we're doing something right. Maybe we should talk to the Graal people to see what is needed. So how do you do that? Going back to this page right here. This is the pull request that one of our developers, Vitali, made. And there's a whole checklist. There's a whole checklist of things that you need to do, and then Vitali just filled everything out. The people at GraalVM were very, very much helpful and very friendly in guiding us to what is needed. So what does this reachability repo do? Anytime GraalVM is compiling something, it encounters a dependency. It will look like, can I compile this? And if I can find it on the reachability repo, then it will grab those index JSON files, those reflection JSON files, and it will load them into the compilation process, either from the reachability repository or from the jar files. Okay. I'm still on the browser. Okay. Come on. What's next? So there's a few things that we want to do next, or at least are open to doing next. iText is available on Graal. The latest version is available on Graal and should be available for a long time. But we received an email, I think, 2 months ago, last month. I'm trying to find the product manager for iText, but the lights are blinding me too much. So we already received a request to bring projects that we built on top of iText to GraalVM. I think it's our HTML to PDF solution that they want to bring. Okay, I see that I have reached the end of my presentation. So if there's any questions, feel free to ask them now. As mentioned, we have a booth downstairs where I'll be, and I'll get to your question in a moment. And so there's a booth downstairs by the Devox polos, and then we'll answer your questions there if you are unable to ask them here. But I saw a hand raised, and I'll move here, and so I can see you at least. Yeah. Hi.
Quick question. You mentioned you went for option 2.
Yeah.
Why did you not go for option 1, including the metadata in the jar file?
So let me pull up the slide first again. So the question was, it's this slide, right? Yeah. So we went for option 2, not for 1, obviously not for option 3. Why did you choose 2 and not 1? There's a few reasons to that. The first reason is visibility for our users, so that they know that iText is supported on Graal. So that's for us, first of all, a bit of a lesser weight on support for us, because we wouldn't get those questions like, "Hey, is iText on Graal?" That allows us to offload that responsibility to that page. Basically, I think we refer to this page somewhere in an article or something.
But you could also do both, right? So that the jar is at least self-contained when people want to use it for Graal?
You could do both, yeah. And I don't know the exact reason why we don't do both, but I mean, we opted to do the second choice. There's no technical limitation for us to do it as well. Although it might be like making sure that we always have the correct version online or something. Maybe it's something similar to that. Again, I'm on the research team, not on the development team, so I wasn't part of that decision-making process. But if you want, I can ask on Slack, and then you can have the answer within 5 minutes after the talk. Does that answer your question? Okay, I saw a thumbs up. That's good. Anyone else has a question? If not, then I'll let you go have lunch and stop seizing your time. Thank you.
All systems are nominal. Initialize Genesis